Can you leave? No, sorry. It's not happening.
All right. Welcome, everybody, for this second day of the Arcane School Conference in New York. So great to have all of you back. I see many faces from yesterday and several new ones as well. Welcome also to everybody who's joining us online. I think we had just under 300 people yesterday, so that's a great crowd. And we have, it looks like about 40 to 50 here in person, and I expect we'll have quite a few more as we move towards our Wessak meeting, which will conclude this session of the conference. Also, a special welcome to all of you mothers out there. Today is Mother's Day in the US, Canada. I think many countries in Latin America. Mexico's was yesterday, maybe also around the world as well. So yeah, thank you all for making the effort to come in and join us. So we have another full program planned today. I will share some introductory thoughts with all of you, after which we will do a meditation, really more of a visualization. After that, we have two excellent presentations planned from Eduardo Gramaglia, who works with us on the Spanish desk at headquarters, and Zed James, who is a longtime student and secretary in the school. After that, we will then move into breakout rooms online and small group discussions here in with the participants in person with us. That'll last about 50 minutes, which is plenty of time for all of you to bring through some of your own ideas and to share them with others. So we're looking forward to that being a bit more interactive today. To conclude, we'll have a panel with audience participation this time, and then we will conclude, as I said, with our meditation meeting in observance of Wessak. So as many of you know, this year's keynote is Let the Group Express the Quality of the Hidden Vision. Now, at first glance, it seems like a very straightforward injunction to make objective and to express the quality and purpose of the soul. And from one angle, of course, this is correct, and this is one interpretation, and a very useful one, for the manifestation of the soul through the medium of the human is one of the immediate objectives of the plan in the present cycle. However, this keynote also carries a far deeper meaning, one which, as a discipleship group, it is incumbent upon us to try to understand. The quality of the hidden vision, which this keynote is organized around, is one of 7 rules for inducing soul control, which the Tibetan outlines in his second volume of the Treatise on the 7 Rays. These 7 rules, he says, have to do with planetary objectives, objectives which are hierarchies tasked to bring about, though, as we know, humanity is fast becoming an active partner in this work. The Tibetan writes that the hidden vision referred to here is God's own vision of his purpose. We might therefore say that the quality of this vision is the ray of the planetary soul. Now, like the human being, every planet is the incarnation of a life or an entity, and therefore the expression of 2 ray forces which are in a state of esoteric conflict or tension throughout the whole cycle of incarnation. On the planes of logoic manifestation, these 2 fundamental forces work out in a dynamic relationship between what we call the 3 major planetary centers: Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. These 7 rules, therefore, reveal a great deal about the direction of planetary evolution in the coming age. Now, the rules themselves serve a different function for each of the 3 planetary centers. In Shambhala, these 7 rules constitute a 7-fold intention, a product of the directing eye of the Lord of the world. For hierarchy, they are the 7 factors which determine the mode of their work. And for humanity, these same 7 rules become the major rules governing the evolving life of God as it pertains to the human family. These rules are therefore less about humanity and more about that which hierarchy and humanity together bring about in service to planetary purpose. As many of us know, 2025 marks a turning point in the progress of our planetary life. It is the end of the age of the Forerunner, and this year, at the centennial conclave of the hierarchy, the date with all probability will be set for the first stages of the externalization of the hierarchy. This reunification of humanity and hierarchy upon the physical plane is the culmination of millions of years of spiritual labor on the part of humanity and 600 years of careful planning and preparation by hierarchy itself. This event, when it occurs, will set the stage for a totally new cycle of human civilization, one which will see the mysteries restored and, in time, the reappearance of the Christ himself, the fulfillment of the desire of all nations. The World Discipleship Group has a key role to play in this great planetary event. Disciples stand within the ring pass knot of both planetary centers, and they thus serve as links, conduits, or we might say bridges, whereby ashramic energy can be externalized and given a living human form. Now, there is a tendency to think of the hierarchy as limited only to the masters of the wisdom and the senior initiates. But we must recall that the hierarchy actually includes all accepted disciples. We can imagine all sincerely pledged disciples standing on the periphery, learning through their experience on this periphery the fundamentals of hierarchical service, self-sufficiency, group consciousness, and obedience to the will or desire of one's own soul. But accepted disciples definitely do stand within the periphery of the ashram, and they therefore can directly receive and transmit ashramic force. The requirements for acceptance, therefore, are necessarily severe. In the Tibetan's own words, we read that, quote, "A disciple becomes an accepted disciple not only when he starts climbing towards the vision, towards the mountaintop, but when he can also register consciously what he has seen and then begins to do something constructive towards materializing it." And so one only becomes an accepted disciple when they have proven themselves through service and can be trusted and depended upon to register the ashramic note and to transmit that note in alignment with the plan. This discipleship service is spontaneous. It is the result of soul contact. It arises from a love of the whole and all its parts. It is free from selfishness, free from ambition, free from personal desire. It is motivated only by the will and desire of the soul. Now, this will of the soul, this will to serve, we might say, is the fuel which generates that light that illumines the way for others, that love that bridges, draws together, and heals, and that spirit of sacrifice which serves as the basis for the selflessness, impersonality, and group consciousness upon which an unimpeded group rapport must be based. But above all, disciples are servants, servants of the plan and servants of humanity. This is why the Arcane School's emphasis on the development of the will is preceded by an even stronger emphasis on service, and why a study of the problems of humanity runs parallel to all other occult work. But we must not forget that on the discipleship path, the cultivation of the ability to arrive at inner subjective recognitions is just as much a part of one's service life as the study of the world affairs. True esoteric growth occurs through the medium of recognitions. These are, we read, revelatory in their effects, and especially when interpreted in terms of their group significance. In this way, one arrives at a subjective knowledge of the sort that cannot be attained through study or instruction alone. In pursuit of these recognitions, or we might say realizations of subjective truth, one learns how to employ the vision, and perception of the soul with a directedness that spans both the inner and the outer life. Such a focusing of the directing eye of the soul leads to that important ability to penetrate to the point of precipitation. In this way, the disciple thus learns the meaning of the Tibetan statement that he must become a moving point and hence a line. He is a bridge between hierarchy and humanity because he himself is also a reservoir of energy, a point of tension from which truth, illumination, and love pour forth as strength to others. So as we all know, though, to become this moving point is no easy task. But it is made easier if we recall the simple fact that everything that can possibly be revealed already exists within us and all around us in a state of potentiality, simply awaiting an invoking agent or will to sound it forth. The disciple who has unified the inner and outer life holds a major key to the creative expression of divinity. He unifies the two ways into one way, which is himself, the soul-infused personality. As the moving point along this way, he contacts that which lies latent in the mind of God, which we also call the rain cloud of knowable things, and then transforms it into an active, manifested power and light which can be seen and known by all. Thus the serving disciple, really the discipleship group, can function as the third divine aspect, the light bearer, and embodies the very essence of what it means to be human. The ultimate consummation of planetary purpose, in fact, will see all three aspects of divinity find expression in man. Once humanity can intelligently precipitate its own karma and learns to truly lift the three subhuman kingdoms, we read the highest also will be lifted up. And though this final point of planetary consummation lies far ahead, the time is now when humanity can begin to share in the work of hierarchy, what the Tibetan refers to as the great hierarchical task of illuminating, precipitating, and lifting. This will prepare the way for a karmic interplay and cooperation between the three planetary centers, which will one day make humanity a focal point of power and an outpost of consciousness of God in the solar system, an expression truly of the quality of the hidden vision. So we'll move now into a meditation. Really, it's a visualization. This is from it's an old Arcane school meditation, actually, from the archives. And it draws the title is Meditation on the Dynamic Will. But at the heart of this meditation, as you will see, is really the very important principle of discipleship, which the Buddhists call the Bodhisattva vow, which is that this principle of compassion really is the central motivating factor of everything the disciple has to do, even to the point of relinquishing everything eventually, and that it's that love for the other, love for the whole, love for the plan that ultimately sustains our work. One more thing, it's a little bit, there's a mantra at the end that we'll say together that we don't normally say. So you all have on the screen on Zoom, you'll have the text there. If you do want to join, then you have the papers in your folder. And if not, you can just join mentally during that phase. We do, the instruction is to repeat the mantra twice as well. So a note appended to the top of this meditation says, this meditation will evoke the dynamic will which supersedes dynamic longing. These two are often confused in the minds of aspirants. It is the will of the soul that must be brought into play for group ends, and not the will and aspiration of a consecrated personality. Raise your consciousness to the head, gathering there at the same time the heart force. Sound the Om 3 times in the head. As you exhale, see the energy generated pouring through the heart center of your coworkers and through them out into the world. Visualize then a reservoir of supply, and over it what Patanjali calls the rain cloud of that which can be known. Picture yourself as separated from this reservoir by a desert, and realize that the supply must come to you like a river, and that you have not to go to it. Realize then that this desert is peopled by thirsty souls, and that it is the supply of their need, and not your success in tapping the reservoir, which lies like a burden on your heart. As you realize this world need and lose sight of what you as an individual have to do, you should see emerging from the reservoir a trickle or thread of the needed supply. See this trickle increase into a great river so that the desert disappears. Close with the Om after repeating twice the following words. We'll say them together. The supply I touch and am, that supply I give. The central light I reach, so oft I pass along the lighted way to those who need the light. I seek to walk the ways of men as light and love and power. My strength and power comes from the secret place, and much I know. I live for others and must learn to lose myself in them. The supply I touch and am, that supply I give. The central light I reach, so oft I pass along the lighted way to those who need the light. I seek to walk the ways of men as light and love and power. My strength and power comes from the secret place, and much I know. I live for others and must learn to lose myself and them. Everyone, I just want to now invite Eduardo Gramaglia to come up and his presentation will be on the mystery of sound and the vision of a new world. Thank you, Eduardo. Apologies.
Hello, everyone. So now we're here to share some thoughts. Around the time when the Buddha walked the earth, Asia Minor was home to an enlightened generation of thinkers whose words would later echo through the writings of the early church fathers. Though commonly referred to as philosophers, they were in truth scientific seekers, impersonal observers of the hidden causes behind nature, like all esoteric students, of course. Among them was Heraclitus of Ephesus, who declared that the most powerful harmony is the one that remains hidden. From its earliest origins, the word harmony carried a weight not to be taken lightly. It pointed to the reality of the cosmos as one life, one consciousness, articulated through the ordered interplay of its parts, sustaining the grand mechanism of the universe. For the ancient thinkers, particularly those initiated into the mystery schools, the Delphic injunction, know thyself, did not refer to introspective psychological analysis, but to the understanding of one's role within the greater whole. If we reflect on what it means to align with an inner group, we may begin to grasp the deeper significance of that ancient and mysterious word, harmony, derived from the verb meaning to fit together, to align, to adjust. Rudolf Steiner, who saw music as the sensory revelation of the supersensible world, described how planetary motions and their interrelations resonated musical processes. In this view, the so-called, mainly by Aristotle, harmony of the spheres envisions the cosmos as a vast musical instrument where each part must sound its unique note, perceptible only in relation to the whole. It is the right relationship between sounds rather than the sounds themselves that constitutes music. As a microcosm, the human being was described by Steiner as a living lyre, the ancient instrument of Apollo, and by Annie Besant as an Aeolian harp, a delicate instrument vibrating to the breath of the oar. We need little reminding of the power of sound, from ancient myths and legends whispering of scales that could unmake empires, to modern esoteric claims like those of H.P. Blavatsky, who spoke of tones so potent that they might lift the great pyramid of Cheops into the air, or breathe life back into the fading body of a dying man. From this ancient esoteric perspective, music, like esoteric astrology, deals with those conditioning and governing energies and forces which play through and upon the whole field of space, as the Tibetan defines it. However, what really concerns us now is that sound leaves a very powerful impression in space, if we could but realize it. In Isis Unveiled, the author claimed to have mentally heard the din of the Battle of Marathon in Greek, which took place centuries before Christ. In a world increasingly burdened by sound contamination, the task of reconciling the prevailing dissonances with the vision of the soul controlling form, life, and all events is a challenging one. The word vision, as used here and in this year's keynote, does not refer to wishful imagining, but to a clear intuition of a plan within the divine mind. In other words, God's own vision of his purpose. It is the evidence of things not yet seen, as Paul defined faith, something that already vibrates as an archetype and which will eventually manifest, with or without the dissonances and delays caused by us, learning and struggling aspirants and disciples. This plan, held in solution by the spiritual hierarchy, the watchers on the other side, is destined for inevitable realization. The vision, we are told, never disappears, never vanishes. It is only our own personality, bound to time, that steps aside. Perhaps it may seem curious that in the technicalities of musical harmony, dissonance plays an important and distinctive role, without which music itself would not be possible. Consonance is perceived as the resolution of a dissonance that announces and prepares it. Observing the great musical masterpieces of history suggests that dissonance is used for the purpose of creating the necessary tension, a kind of crisis, so to speak, leading to a healing moment when it resolves into consonance. Even composers who dramatically prolonged dissonances and kept audiences on edge, such as Richard Wagner, ultimately sought to proclaim a final redemption, as seen, for instance, in Tristan and Isolde, the most revolutionary work of its time. Wagner first forces the listener to fully experience the dissonance of human anguish, leading to a final grand consonance of a transcendental immersion into the awe and redemption by love in a dramatic representation of harmony through conflict. The restoring power of harmony had already been hinted at by Plato, who in the Timaeus states that the movements of music are similar to those of the soul, therefore having a healing function. More than one student becomes fascinated by external healing techniques, forgetting that it is the consonant energy of the soul that constitutes the most effective healing power. History shows that when this restoring nature is denied and the balance between dissonance and consonance is disrupted, materialism begins to prevail and some significant crisis approaches. As the Great War was taking shape, major composers like Igor Stravinsky and Arnold Schoenberg ventured into an experimental use of dissonance, claiming that dissonance was a cultural construct. And similar trends appeared in many other arts. Florian Illis observes in the book 1913, this shift reflected the inner tearing and the frantic dynamism of an age whose noise had already begun during the Industrial Revolution. In turn, Max Heindel once remarked that the great works of art produced prior to the 20th century had imprinted a deliberate vibratory pattern upon the planet, intended to counteract in advance the effects of the imminent age of catastrophes, as the eminent historian Eric Hobsbawm called the 20th century. We may wonder how the great dissonances of our time can be resolved into a new world and era when true harmony prevails and the lower self becomes an instrument of the soul. It is quite reasonable to think that we must first and foremost begin the process within ourselves, through the redemption of a dissonant personality and its progressive attunement to the note of the soul. Of course, it's easily said than done, but this repolarization process will lead the disciple, we are told in Discipleship in the New Age, into a more constructive and happier phase of life. Quote, if he permits music to play a major part in his life rhythm. This was no vague promise. Anyone who subjects himself to musical impact will see great and significant changes take place in life. words dictated by a master who never indulged in mere poetical statements. And this is because the soul, on its tiny scale, let us note this adjective, creates the new human being through the power of sound. The Tibetan statement is pretty clear. Music is necessary in life, both literally and figuratively. And by the latter, we understand that it is not only about listening to music that we consider uplifting, but of transforming the entire process of soul infusion into a gradual tuning to a higher perceived note. As we notice, only hints can be given, not full explanations. One of the most evocative being, by the way, the suggestion agreed upon by Steiner and the Tibetan master that the relationship between the lower self and the spiritual world is represented by the interval of the fifth, that very interval upon which the whole network of the musical system is built. Is it a coincidence that it began to be challenged at the time of the Great War? This sort of thoughts, still a little too abstract, will increasingly emerge as the fourth ray increases its power, I think. As Murray Schafer observed, all inquiry into sound necessarily ends in silence, that sacred space which allows the sound, the voice of the silence, to vibrate along the sutratma and flood the consciousness. And this is the beginning of true yoga. When the glamour behind chaotic communication is dispelled, the magical value and use of the word and sound will re-emerge. The opening of the Gnostic gospel, in the beginning was the word, not only portrays the dawn of the cosmos, but also the intimate work of the ashram, where a master, after meditating and visualizing, speaks, and that which he seeks to create takes form. The magical power and responsibility of naming has been sufficiently dealt with in the secret doctrine, but we must know this is our future as human beings. So let us not be disheartened by present circumstances. The dissonance of the modern world will ultimately resolve into a new and enlightened civilization. The disciple is not misled by the immediate perspective. Therefore, particularly in this year of great spiritual importance, let the crisis of the times not shake our resolve, for we seed, plan, and work for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Zed, if you'd like to come up. So Zed will be speaking on identification, expression, becoming.
Thank you, Michael. I'm so happy to be here today, together with all of you. I'd like to talk a moment about identity, expression, and becoming. It may be that this transformative triangle is central to all evolution within the human kingdom. Together, we might see these three angles as guiding our journey as personalities, from limited, fragmented self-awareness to the profound realization of our inherent unity with higher, more expansive states of consciousness. It can certainly be inspiring to consider that through conscious exploration and intentional effort, we can transition from a state of fragmentation toward intentional expression, ultimately in one life or another, becoming the fullness that is our infinite self. But let's take identity for a second. What is identity made of? What energy forms its subjective inner contour? Imagine, if you will, a ritual of introspection and creative imagination, much like our school practice of the evening review. We can make our physical bodies comfortable, lying or sitting, with our eyes gently closed, and we might envision in our imagination beside us is a small, intimate bedside table. Within this table, there's a single drawer, and inside that drawer, there's a small notebook. Beside this notebook is a small pencil, long worn down from regular use. Each evening we can open this notebook and observe an evolving record of our inner self, written in varying scripts, reflective of the different stages in our life. All the entries in this notebook begin with two simple words: I am. The notebook is filled with statements, capturing energetic patterns that we've accepted over time. Some entries, etched in a child's hesitant handwriting, reflect patterns embraced in innocence. I am shy. I am uncertain. I am afraid. Other entries might be formed with more confidence and clarity. I am capable. I am determined. I am brave. As we review these inscriptions and reflect on the energetic patterns that they point toward, it can become clear that their significance isn't in the words themselves, but in the quality of the energy each word pattern carries, in the effects of these patterns on our identities as personalities. Words like weakness, smallness, unworthiness aren't inherently negative, but they can entrain into the physical brain and nervous system forces which impose unnecessary limitation and density. When such energies wholly define our identity as personalities, they inevitably calibrate and condition the inclusion potential of our six senses and filter out other patterns and streams of information that we have now become out of sympathy with. As a personality works their way onto the path, we inevitably will consider a deeper examination of our imaginary notebooks and all of their entries as part of our probationary process. Within this examination, we may discover entries we've unconsciously adopted from others, labels cast upon us by other personalities to which we have some karma that needs working out. No matter what these labels are, when we believe them, when we allow these energetic patterns into our hearts, they may cast a shadow within this sacred space, which can affect this inner environment, even disrupting for a moment the sanctity of this otherwise soulful space. Identification on the path has to be more than passive acceptance. It must develop into an active, creative endeavor. By consciously engaging with this practice, we learn to harness the power to choose what energy and forces we will use to formalize our identities. Rather than passively adopting imposed patterns, we can, with intention and discernment, choose to write into being patterns of energy that authentically reflect our soul's selfless intention. We can experiment with this here today by using our group's creative imagination. We can take a moment and envision intentionally inscribing transformative word patterns such as the following: I am joy. I am love. I am wisdom. I am freedom. I am power. I am illumination. I am the light of all awareness. I am discernment. I am grace. I am truth. I am the heart in which we strive. I am the love in which we thrive. We can notice the difference in energy these word patterns carry. They point to expansive, vibrant, elevating pools of energy circulating within the world of ideas. They uplift not only our local inner state, but ripple outward radiantly, positively influencing our environment and interactions. So, conscious identification leads naturally into the second angle, which we are terming expression. Expression is the bridge that translates our chosen identities as patterns of energy into tangible, visible, activated forms. It is through expression that we actively embody the energies we have claimed. How might we express joy, for instance? What would joy look like if it expressed itself vibrantly through a local appearance, its words, and its actions? If joy were personified, how would it speak? What would it wear? Vibrant colors? Flowing fabrics? Playful styles? By creatively exploring these questions, we as personalities can become a living expression of the energy we call joy. Expression, therefore, is not only artistic and creative, it is fundamentally practical and fully transformative. With this in mind, we may find that expression can be seen as the dynamic interplay between the circulating inner energy of our patterned identifications and our outer worlds. Through intentional expression, we clarify and reinforce circulation through the energy channels of our etheric body, which then further condition the activities and effectual behaviors of our physical geographies. In this way, we can find that each moment becomes an opportunity to embody and consciously manifest our chosen states, something we may simply refer to in our training at the Arcane School under the occult term of service. This continuous interplay between identification and expression naturally unfolds into becoming, the final culminating stage of this fiery triangle. Becoming may be seen as the integration and synthesis of our identities and expressions into a fully lived reality, the realization of potential, the crystallization of energy previously held in thought and in imagination, now made active, alert, and lucid. In becoming, we enter the transformative state, wherein our chosen identities no longer exist solely as entries in our imaginary notebook, or as intentional as-if expressions. Rather, they become integral, undeniable parts of who we are as living, breathing aspects of life itself. They inform as independent behaviors, infuse above to below, and in fact, dictate the terms and conditions of our burgeoning creative agency in service to our group and our group's collective progress. As we engage with this practice of intentional identification and expression, we can gradually become, etherically and physically speaking, the very energies we have consciously chosen as souls. We can move beyond temporary states of joy or wisdom into a permanent embodiment of these qualities. We can evolve from merely practicing kindness or compassion into becoming an incarnation of kindness, compassion, and/or love itself. In this state of becoming, we can find ourselves standing, not just metaphorically, at the very center of our own life, fully aware, empowered, and aligned. Our personality life, now an undistorted reflection of our highest aspirations, our deepest truths, and our most radiant energetic potentials. As we continue this group effort, we can remember that limitations are always self or soul imposed. The identities we choose, the energies we express, and the states we embody are entirely within our power to select and cultivate. We are not bound by past identities or external impositions. Instead, we have the inherent freedom to write new entries, create new expressions, and manifest new realities as it best serves the needs of our group and to the needs of the time. Ultimately, we can each of us, in our own unique way, in our own appropriate time, come to embody a truth once spoken profoundly and simply by the Christ, that I and my Father are one. Thank you for sharing this time here today. May the energies of abundance, prosperity, and generous love circulate freely through the interwoven triangles of our group environment, resolving all karma, all accumulation, and all harmful magnetic conditions. May light, love, and power restore the plan on earth.
Thank you, Zed. That was wonderful. So we're just a little bit behind schedule, but it's fine. We'll have about 40 minutes for this small group discussion. I'll just address the Zoom participants first. We're going to send you Zoom participants into breakout rooms. You'll have about 15 to 20 in each room. We have 40 minutes to discuss a prompt, which I'll share shortly. We have some moderators for those breakout rooms. Some of them we didn't get enough moderators, so some of them won't have moderators. We just ask that everyone be respectful of those others in your breakout room. If you have a lot to say, maybe say some of it and then leave some space for somebody else to share. Be respectful of other people's views, et cetera, okay. The discussion prompt is, we'll be discussing the freedom and the divine plan. That's what we're going to be discussing. The prompt, which I'll read again for those of you in the room once we move around. The four freedoms, originally articulated by Franklin D. Roosevelt, are as much of the plan as humanity can reasonably put into effect at this time. The quality of freedom is essential for humanity to live, to think, to know, and to plan. So we ask during this period that you please discuss freedom as an ideal, as a quality, or as a principle, and its role in the evolution of humanity in the new age. So you may approach this from any angle you wish, potentially even drawing from one of Roosevelt's four freedoms, which are freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. These are being shared in the Zoom chat, so all of you will have copies. You just download it to your computer now before you go away. And those of you in the room, these are in your folders, and if you don't have one, you just raise your hand in a moment and we'll make sure you get one, because it's quite a long statement I just made. Generally, freedom and the divine plan, you could also just go from there if that's simpler. Spanish participants, as you know, if you would like to participate, you need to participate in your own breakout room in the Spanish language. You also need to put the ES before your name. Go to your participant screen, find your name, change it, put the ES. Thank you. So we'll say goodbye to our Zoom participants now. All of you in the room, if you could maybe stand up or probably just form yourselves into, I would say, groups of 8, 7 or 8, say 7 to 10. You may need to move, you may not need to move. And if you want a card, just raise your hand and we'll come find you, okay? Yeah. I'll just 1 second, I'll go, yeah. So we will come back at 3:30 together. All right, thank you, everybody. Of course, I know we all want to keep talking longer, but it is 3:30, so we're going to move now into a break. So you can't hear? Okay. I'm just going to make a brief announcement, everybody, so we could finish. The Zoom people are back as well, I hear. So I just wanted, before we move into the break, I just wanted to extend a special thank you to everybody who's made the conference possible. The headquarters staff, the volunteers, our AV team, our translators especially. Thank you all. Everybody who have prepared talks, and of course also the Arcane School students themselves who have been meditating and reflecting on this keynote over the past several months. So thank you all. A special thank you also to all those who are able to give whatever they can financially in support of the work. As many of you know, all of our activities are offered to the public free without charge, but of course, this does not mean that there is no cost to those activities. The Lucis Trust is not endowed, and we do depend upon the support of those who believe in this work and what it stands for. So if you would like to make a donation today or anytime, you can come to me and let me know. There's a basket in the hallway. You can also go to our website as well and donate there. So thank you all. And we'll be back in 20 minutes. All right, everybody, thank you all. Please come back to your seats. We've- All right, thank you all. Welcome back. We're going to start this session. Essentially, we're going to have a panel. We'll bring in the audience as well. But before we get started, Eduardo Gramaglia, who works with us on the Spanish desk, will sound the great invocation in Spanish. And this is a good reminder that our whole broadcast today, our whole conference, is in Spanish and in English, and the Arcane School headquarters in New York serves two sections. There's the English section and the Spanish section, and we're glad to have both of them here today.
Desde el punto de luz en la mente de Dios, que afluya luz a las mentes de los hombres, que la luz descienda a la tierra. Desde el punto de amor en el corazón de Dios, que afluya amor a los corazones de los hombres, que Cristo retorne a la tierra. Desde el centro donde la voluntad de Dios es conocida, que el propósito guíe a las pequeñas voluntades de los hombres. El propósito que los maestros conocen y sirven. Desde el centro que llamamos la raza de los hombres, que se realice el plan de amor y de luz y selle la puerta donde se halla el mal. Que la luz, el amor y el poder restablezcan el plan en la tierra.
Thank you, Eduardo. It was a very sonorous Om. Seems your talk entered everyone's consciousness to good effect. So, thank you. So this final, not final session because we have our Wessak meeting after this, but this session will be essentially a panel, but it's also open to participants here in the room as well as those online. We consider this sort of a capstone panel in that we're just really going to discuss the keynote broadly. So anything I shouldn't say that. Anything is not fair game. But you're free to share freely on a wide variety of thoughts, anything related to the conference or to discipleship generally, I suppose. So anyway, to get us started, though, I'd like to pose just a simple question to both Eduardo and Zed. That is that this injunction to express the quality of the hidden vision is very much a discipleship one, because it has to do with this externalization or this objectification, this and that brings into our consciousness this idea of this divine creative urge and what it means to respond to the divine creative urge to create those forms that will aid one's brother or sister, that will bestow knowledge on another, that will somehow aid humanity in its evolutionary journey. So I just wanted to ask both of you, what are ways that creativity and creative expression, what roles do they play in your spiritual lives? Could just start there. Maybe also how the Arcane School training helped to support the pursuit of creative expression and creativity in your lives. And keeping in mind, it's not just the artist who's an expressive responsibility here. It's really the whole range of human living.
In a way, I think it's quite similar to what we discussed yesterday, because we know that creative life is one of the qualities of a disciple. Yesterday, the comment was made that the Tibetan did not give a wholly rounded out definition of disciple or discipleship, I remember. And sometimes I find a hint of that in the fact that we are told that the masters themselves are disciples on a level that we don't understand. So in a way, it seems clear that it's an ongoing, ever redefining itself definition. It's something that for a reason we don't have a wholly complete and rounded out definition, because it is the path that we tread that in a way re-signifies what discipleship is. And I think that it's quite similar to what we think of that creative urge that the disciple, little by little, is unfolding in a way that we generally connect creative life with artists and art and artistic creations, but we are told that it is not so. I mean, so I think that the first question we could discuss is, what do we understand by creative life, and what is that? What is really that creative urge that is such an inherent quality of a disciple?
What that makes me think about is, for me, creativity is the bridge between abstract and concrete things. The creative process is that place in the middle where the abstraction is held and something arises creatively that then becomes a form. It becomes something detailed, it becomes something strategic and specific. And I wonder about as I'm thinking about that, I notice that there's the other side of that process where there's strategy and logic and structure, that it can be, something can start there as well and then move creatively across the bridge into abstraction, and that both ways are possible. I think for me, a lot of the time I go from the abstract, which is something the school has nurtured and helped facilitate, develop, and further what was already possible in my constitution. And then within holding something abstractly and engaging the abstraction, to me, that is what feels like the creative process. where it goes can be dependent on the individual and the constitution and whatever it is that happens within their logic circuitry, that whatever it is that happens on the other side, whether they're scientific and they engage in abstract principle and then figure out a series of steps to test and experiment with something, or an artist who channels that into their physical system and lets that just express itself through movement or dance or music or painting or whatever. Anyway, that's where I went with that.
That's brilliant. Thank you both. Just to say, if anybody would like to chime in now, the floor is basically open. So we have 2 people with mics that will be running those around. I have the Zoom here if anybody raises their hand and wants to be unmuted. If nobody has anything to share, of course, we'll just continue up here, so that's fine. Before I started working here, I had a career as a professional ballet dancer, so it's a very creative endeavor in the artistic sense. And I found in my own experience that I was constantly thrown back upon myself in a way that was very intensely self-reflective, in a way that at a certain stage became unuseful. And it actually interfered with the sort of spirituality of the creative process. Wondering if either of you have ever experienced, I guess, if you could share maybe how you handle creative limitation, whether it's the sense that I just described or any other sort of creative limitation where you're up against something that you can't overcome, or to be human is to encounter failure, definitely. So how do you handle that in terms of your creative pursuit? Or do you have anything? If you don't have anything to share, I'm not going to put you guys on the spot, but it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
I think I interpret that, Michael, in in my own process, I see that manifesting in perhaps 2 ways. The first way was as it exists in my inability to maintain a certain abstract tension. So the creative bridge is the space wherein something that's not clear is being attended to. And so, okay, can I do it? Can I hold it there long enough for something clear, a form to arise, for something to take shape? I mean, I may not be able to for all kinds of reasons. I'm distracted, I'm tired, I'm whatever it is that's happening. And then the second thing is, can I make sure that the form has enough relevance to the abstract presentation or pattern without a perceived loss of distortion? Because I also think that that's a place where I fail a lot. The abstract piece seems it's fine. I can hold it and engage with it in some subjective place. But the transmission there's too much distortion when it arises, when it comes out. It doesn't feel like what was here was what was there. And so for me, that's just, that part is resolved through repetition.
Yeah, and much repetition mainly. If we think of the great works of art, we can feel that sense of awe that those were really trying to create forms that express their sense of truth, their sensed truth. I don't think nowadays the art career encourages expressing one's own sensed truth and how to express them in forms. They rely heavily on certain parameters and already given principles. So I think that's the path is to the only way, I think, is really a kind of meditation that leads to develop the ability to tap that universal mind, to sense those truths and find a way to express it. But to what extent a common person could express those truths in real life, in normal daily life? We have that idea of creativity as a great artist producing a major work, or how can that fit into the life of a meditator who tries to, in a way, influence and irradiate his or her own environment? How to precipitate ideas and really transform the world.
There's several hands. We have. Let's go to Thomas Koshi first, and then I think the gentleman in the front, and then Barbara, and then, yeah. No, that was great though what you shared. But let's go to Thomas Koshi first online. I gotta. All right, Thomas, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I have to go back to my experience in terms of creativity. I mean, I'm not that a creative person, but there was one instance that really happened. And I agree with Zed that it can have two levels, on the concrete level and on the abstract level. You know, when there are people who are asking me to record the chants that I used to do in the Rosicrucian order, for example. And I didn't know how to do it. You know, I didn't have, from the concrete mind, nothing was really coming. So it just so happened that some musicians came into my circle, and we decided, okay, we'll go and record this music. And we never practiced. I put all the musicians together in a circle, and I told them, just play what comes to you, and I'll just follow whatever that is. And that's how it happened. And the whole idea behind that was that the chant that comes out be a healing process. The people who listen to it maybe will feel some sort of healing. And it seems that for several people that has happened. So the jumping from that concrete side to the abstract side, to me, that's where the true creativity comes from.
Thank you. Thank you.
At least
Tom.
that's from my own experience.
Yeah, thank you. Sir? Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. In terms of discipleship, as you mentioned, the simplicity of creativity really lies in the soul applying the technique of fusion as a probationary disciple is becoming an accepted disciple. And in that process, those three qualities, no matter what the first three rays the monad might be on, that the quality of creativity is the sublimation of the astral body due to aspiration that allows the quality of the hidden vision, those forms, that knowledge and those expressions and those revealings that allow the hidden quality, right, of the vision to come forth and create automatically, instantaneously, because they're being created by a group conscious soul outside of time, right, in the now, right? That's where, so millions of concepts, millions of art forms, musics or books could be written in a split second. And then the soul, which is embodying the mind of the disciple, right? And the disciple has removed his personality and his astral body from the formula and allows that energy to flow right to the brain, right? And under this, in contemplation, you know, and that creativity is instantaneous and has nothing to do with, you don't learn it, you can't train for it, you only become it because you allow yourself to be out of the way as a personality. Mm-hmm. Now, the group conscious soul and the group soul process, or the group conscious process, come in and create those forms instantaneously.
Absolutely.
Your
Yeah.
job is to bring one concept in at a time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh,
No, it's okay.
oh,
It
please.
was just straying a little.
I'm
in your
not,
mouth,
u-
but
I'm
we
not
heard
used to
it.
using a mic. I
It's okay.
apologize.
A lot of us aren't.
I'm
no,
sorry, you
yeah.
guys probably didn't hear
But
nothing.
thank you. Thank you.
but-
Yeah, I think the revelation of quality. I mean, that's almost. It's like you could say it's a new frontier, really, for the creative human being. you know.
Just a thought. I would underline that word simplicity, because simplicity is never self-referential. I would just. I think we could consider the question whether creativity can or cannot be trained.
No, in my case, it wasn't.
Thank
And
you.
I wrote hundreds of thousands of things, but outside of my personality control, other than you have to develop the mind, you have to have concepts, you have to have vocabulary. But if you have concepts and vocabulary in music, then you can bring music in. If you don't, you can't bring music in.
Thank
right?
you, yeah.
You have to train the mind for the conceptual vocabulary needed to bring that form of revelation to humanity into the lower brain level, right? Without.
Thank you, yeah.
Right, just that training, yes, I agree. You must train. But creativity is instantly an expression of the soul itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. We'll move on to Barbara. She's right behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So in the earliest of the days of the school, the idea of the creative imagination is introduced. And also, we're told that meditation in itself is a creative act. So I think this idea of creativity is on some sort of pedestal that a lot of us feel we can't approach. But if you look at children, they're highly creative in their play of just how they go about doing it if they're free to do it. And in terms of creative art, of course you have to have training, but there's spontaneous eruptions of joy through song that people don't plan, and it's a creative act. And when you start to really explore this idea of creativity, it awakens the intuition, which allows the builder to have a concrete plan that's created from the intuition and how the intuition taps into a higher level and bringing down into form what that thinker has perceived.
Thank you. We have John Heron online. All right, John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, friends. It's great to hear that you were in a creative endeavor, Michael, being a ballet dancer. Just as a point of reference for myself, I feel that I've spent my entire life struggling to be more free in my creativity. I had worked for many years in a financial services firm, surrounded by CPAs and accountants, and the view is anything creative is fraud. But as we talked about in our breakout group, Carly brought up the point that many of us are afraid at this time, and fear is really the great illusion. What we're all trying to do is to find that freedom of expression that Roosevelt had articulated in his 4 freedoms, to be able to bring out the inner eudaimon, the inner glory, the Christ within. I would conclude with a quote from Robert Browning. About the time he was writing, we were first discovering the atmosphere, oxygen. Of course, it had always been there. We wouldn't be here without it. And we were so used to it, we couldn't even realize as a species that it was part of our livingness. I think it's the same way with creativity. It's a part of us all. It's invisible because we're surrounded by it. But once we can recognize it, that's when the true growth begins. Robert Browning, the poet, said, but a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for? And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
There's somebody in the room
back here.
here, John, Curtis.
Yes.
Yep.
So, at least in the experience that's been given to me, there is an element of what I should call grace involved in this. That is that it may be the case that the downpouring from the rain cloud of knowable things comes through us and then is done with us. And then there is a period when we might not be having that, and maybe we struggle and try and don't get anywhere with it. And then at some other point, as needed, not by us, but by whatever it is that is causing all of this, the grace returns. And so whether we train for it, whether we skill in it, grace has to be an aspect of this.
Thank you. That was an excellent point. We'll move back to online. We have Eleni Levidi. Eleni, if you could unmute yourself.
Yes, I just want to name my
Okay,
home.
Eleni, we can't hear you. If you could just try to speak up or maybe get closer to your mic.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
It's a little better, but if you could just make sure to keep it a little louder, it'd be better. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. That's good.
Okay. So I want to say thank you. I feel so enriched, but everything I'm receiving, and on that note, I want to bring
Eleni, I'm sorry, we can't. It's breaking up. I think there's a connection issue. It sounds like a robot. Is your connection okay? It sounds a little bit. Maybe try again. It sounds a little better now. Try
okay.
again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to bring in the what I have experienced as the receptive principle, and it's how can I be of service to what is asking to take form? What does it mean to become available as a vessel that will nurture the form that wants to take to manifest, to become actualized, and that the form somehow becomes what it is via the process, also via the creative process, and the discipline it requires to become such an available vessel. So, thank you.
Thank you. We're just getting started, but it's almost starting to wrap up, actually. We'll have to plan longer time for next year so we can, a little bit more discussion in. So Wendy, I don't think we'll get to you because I just want to leave the floor open for Eduardo and Zed. If you'd like to say any final comments, if you don't, that's fine. We can let it settle where it is.
I was just wondering if we have really understood the role of imagination in this process.
Yeah.
Because in a way, the creativity we have been talking about implies that we generally take all forms around us for granted, and have you made the effort to see them as symbols of inner realities? We are told to look into the inner causes of events, but how do we do that? Imagination, I think, is the key word here.
All right, well, no, thank you all so much. Big round of applause for everybody who shared. Thank you all. Yeah. So we set aside a little bit of time. The Wessak Festival meditation, full moon meditation meeting will start at 4:30 sharp, and so that's in 10 minutes. And so we'd like everybody to take the next 10 minutes. You can get up and get water, or use the restroom again if you need to. But if we could take the next 10 minutes for sort of silent and meditative, contemplative preparation for this very important sort of high point of the year. The exact time of the Wessak full moon, as I'm sure Chris will also mention again, is tomorrow afternoon at 12:55 p.m. For those of us who are here in New York, we will have a special meeting at the Lucis Trust offices. You'll have to email us to get on the security list to join, but anybody here in person is welcome to attend. It will not be broadcast. Email us at newyork@lucistrust.org if you'd like to RSVP, or just come find me afterward. All right, so we'll start in promptly at 4:30. Thank you all.
welcome everyone to the Taurus full moon meeting and the celebration of the Wessak festival, more about which will be said a little later on. The peak time of the full moon is 12:55 EDT, tomorrow. The power of the group meditation is enhanced at the time of the full moon due to the energies that are flowing freely between the sun and the earth. And this alignment allows individuals and groups to intensify their approach to the spiritual hierarchy, the center of love on our planet, as well as to Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. So as we may know, this higher interlude of 2025 that we're now in sees the ending of one stage of endeavor by the spiritual hierarchy and the beginning of another. The closing cycle, the stage of the forerunner, aimed to establish a path of resonant interplay between the human and spiritual kingdoms in preparation for the first stage of the hierarchy's externalization. Group sensitivity to the energetic rhythms of this next stage and its expression through group radiation is a goal worthy of our most ardent efforts. And while any new dynamic can undoubtedly take much time to establish itself, a fresh impetus may be detectable at a relatively early stage. Added to this, we're told in the externalization of the hierarchy that the great General Assembly of the hierarchy is due to take place this year. It is indicated that at this assembly, the date in all probability will be set for the first stage of the externalization of the hierarchy. In the years following this assembly, discipleship groups will no doubt work diligently to become extra sensitive to hierarchical impression in order to formulate new ideas and ways of preparing contemporary minds for the reappearance. Now is a perfect time to begin this work with the forces of enlightenment that are now streaming forth from the constellation of Taurus. As they charge the Earth's inner atmosphere, a thinning of the veils occurs between the spiritual and human kingdoms, bringing a sense of fusion and unity. So this is the high point of the spiritual calendar, and the joyful anticipation of this occasion is captured perfectly in the keynote of Taurus. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is light. So let's pause now, and then we'll say together the Gayatri. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. Many of us will be familiar with the festival of Wessak and the annual ceremony that is said to take place in a Himalayan valley, attended by the Christ and members of the spiritual hierarchy. Through the ceremony and ritual, the Christ and his disciples magnetize the planetary ethers in preparation for the energies to be received, which they then duly absorb and radiate throughout the planet. At the climax of this festival, the Buddha is said to appear and give his blessing. And in the book, The Externalization, we read that the annual return of the Buddha to bless his people everywhere and to convey a message of wisdom, light, and love to humanity, coming as he does from the very heart of deity itself, is the outer evidence and guarantee of inner divine guidance and revelation in this present world cycle of 2,500 years. Year by year he returns. For a brief minute, he reminds us that God exists and ever loves, that he is not unmindful of his people, that the heart of the universe is unalterable compassion, and that man is not alone. To bring this recognition about, and to make this appearance possible, a living triangle of energy is created and focused through three great spiritual individuals who evoke recognition both in the East and the West. They are known to believers of every faith and all nationalities, and these three are the Lord of the world, the Ancient of Days, Sanakamara, the planetary Logos, Melchizedek, the Buddha, the Illumined One, the Revealer of the light and the wisdom which comes to us from sources far greater than our planetary life, and the Christ, the Son of the Father, the world's Saviour, the Redeemer, the Lord of love. And their spiritual potency has to be stepped down if mankind is to bear the pressure of the impact of the energy. It is this stepping down process which takes place at the time of the May full moon, and it's brought to a focus of transmission by the massed intent of the hierarchy and the mass demand of the world aspirants and disciples, itself drawn forth by the massed need of the people of all lands. So these words illustrate not only the eternal presence of divinity, but also the level of cooperation that takes place between the Christ and the Buddha, both of whom we'll be holding in our thoughts during meditation. Together, they are perfect representations of love, wisdom, and their close working relationship as brothers of revelation has brought increasing levels of light, love, and purpose into human consciousness down the ages. It's a poignant truth that down the ages, much blood has been spilt through religious conflict, given the close relationship between their respective origins. Esoteric writings inform us that Krishna was in fact an earlier incarnation of the Christ, before he inaugurated the Christian epoch by overshadowing the Master Jesus. And the Master Jesus, in turn, later overshadowed the great initiate Muhammad, giving rise to the Muslim faith. So it's not surprising then that a golden thread of truth runs through these and other world religions, as they are ultimately all linked to the same source. So working with this all-encompassing sense of religious truth and unity are those who are either consciously or subconsciously sensitive to the energies released by the Lord of the world, the Buddha, and the Christ. The new group of world servers are people from all backgrounds, religions, and philosophies. They are responsive as souls in varying degrees to the higher influences that are pouring into human consciousness at this time. Collectively, they act as an organ of vision for humanity, and upon them the illuminating rays of Taurus constantly shine. Taurus is said to hide the entire secret of divine purpose and reveals it by touching and opening the eye of light in those who are ready to use it, and that which it conveys for the greater good. The group is symbolized by the bull of Taurus, rushing forward towards divinity and leaving a trail of light in its wake to illumine the way for those who follow. Together, this group of servers, like their elder brothers, are agents of revelation, and all who serve and love their fellow men as souls are part of this group process, helping to create the path of return for the Christ. The Wessak festival is a great reminder that eventually the whole of humanity will realize its glorious destiny, to become a receiving and transmitting station between the higher and lower kingdoms. Perhaps we could say that for most of history, it is the human being that has been the real missing link in the evolutionary chain. It seems that humanity is starting to realize this as millions of people are searching for greater truth and meaning, while at the same time showing a sense of concern and responsibility for the welfare of others, as well as for the animal and vegetable kingdoms. And there's a fierce conflict occurring in the inner lives of many people as they are turning to face themselves and realizing some of the darkness within. This is a lesser revelation that precedes the path of illumination. As the darkness within the human psyche is realized, a great cleansing and purifying takes place, and the struggle to shift identity from an intense individualism to a more group-oriented spirit has begun. It is at this stage, when the Buddha's great truth is realized, that desire is at the root of all suffering. Most students of the ageless wisdom are very familiar with the Buddha's Four Noble Truths that arose from his enlightenment. Simply stated, they concern the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path that leads to the end of suffering. Together they reveal that the energy of desire enables us to be active in the world, but without right direction, it degenerates into a craving for the sensations arising from interactions with matter. And this craving is the cause of suffering. The relationship between desire and suffering operates under the great universal law of cause and effect. And in Buddhist philosophy, it's called the law of dependent origination, and is based on the Buddha's simple but profound formula. When this is, that is. From the arising of this, comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. So the central agency at work in this formula might be called the germ of desire. The word germ variously described as the origin of something that develops and the rudiment of a new organism in an existing one. In the book Esoteric Healing, a germ is described as the first effect of an original cause. With this understanding, we can apply the Buddha's formula to two of the great needs cited in Alice Bailey's writings during the Second World War, because they shed some light on how our national germs of desire have developed into the global problems of today. And she wrote, "The Axis nations need to grasp the teaching of the Buddha as he enunciated it in the Four Noble Truths. They need to realize that the cause of all sorrow and woe is desire. Desire for that which is material. The United Nations need to learn to apply the law of love as enunciated in the life of Christ, and to express the truth that no man liveth unto himself, and no nation either, and that the goal of all human effort is loving understanding, prompted by a program of love for the whole." So from this perspective of the germ of desire, we might regard nations as cells of light, struggling to grow into a worldwide social organism, but contaminated by a virus that lives within each cell, a parasite that encodes the cell's proteins with its own desires, replacing the synthesis which is essential for the structure, function, and regulation of the social organism. And while each cell displays a measure of group aspiration and growth towards the light, the virus thrives in darkness, replicating itself with the host to further its own separative desires. This viral materialism is evident in most, if not all, nations today. This is likely to have been one of the reasons behind the recent pandemic, for pandemics are the anarchic rampage of involutionary lives in the etheric body of the planet, which are indiscriminative and take little note of personal karma. Pandemics are in a large part the result of the misuse of the building energy of love wisdom that nations should be using to create the new world organism in the light of the Christ principle. The time of the pandemic momentarily reignited the vision of world unity, but this opportunity was not seized. And the glamours of wealth and status diverted the vision once again. Somehow the germ of the Christ life has to be revitalized in the nations that they may grow vigorously towards international synthesis. And this is the meaning of the enigmatic biblical phrase, the desire of all nations. The Alice Bailey writings inform us that a germ of desire lies in the emotional nature of every nation, but it is a basis for progress. It is, quote, the subtle force behind the flags of all nations. Behind the flag is a point of power, which is the point of inspiration to the soul of the people. And as it germinates, we shall then have a nation galvanized into activity by interior spiritual energy. The nation will then be linked up through the point at the center with the source of divine inspiration, which is one for all types, all nations, and all races in time and space. So this process is the same for individuals as it is for nations. The spiritualization of desire into aspiration and love has to take place throughout the people of all nations and inaugurate an era where right human relations are elevated to an entirely new level of pure energy. Here relationships are direct and undistorted. And Krishnamurti wrote that it's only when we can see without any preconception that we are able to be in direct contact with anything or anyone in life. People know each other through the images they form of one another by thought, not through direct experience. Images create space between us and what we observe. And in that space there is conflict. When we are single-minded, however, and completely attentive, there is no observer or thing observed. There is no separation, only a state of attention, which is total energy. In Freedom from the Known, he wrote, "When there is space between you and the object observed, you will know there is no love, and without love it is not possible to reform the world or improve it, no matter how hard you try. When there is space, there is conflict. When there is true silence, not based on the stopping of thought, but on something indescribable, a timeless space, a timeless state, a wide, expansive ocean. Only then, in this presence, do we become a living mind, which has no center and therefore no space and time. Such a mind is limitless, and that is the only truth, the only reality." So these words provide a vision of the mind that is both in Christ and the Buddha, a supreme state of enlightenment in the boundless field of universal relationships, the foundations of which is love. To materialize this vision of the future and help make it a reality, we have to act wholeheartedly, in the present, without calculation or reservation, making sure that the only light that guides our vision is the light of love, wholeness and unity. This is the spiritualization of desire. To the extent that all thought of the self and its endless bucket list is obliterated by the light of a greater vision. Desire is not wrong in itself, but constantly needs refocusing throughout the evolutionary journey until, on the path of return, it becomes the overwhelming desire to cooperate with the divine plan of God. And the planetary rulers of Taurus come to humanity's assistance here. Venus, the exoteric ruler, and Vulcan, the esoteric or soul ruler. The combined energy of these planets can help to stimulate the will to love in human consciousness, eventually to the degree that it can fire the entire world with the spirit of relationship. And while Venus facilitates the emergence of the love principle, through the directing power of the mind, Vulcan is a god of beneficial fire. Together, these influences have much to contribute to the blazing spirit of relationship we envision permeating the world. So this is a vision to hold in mind in connection with the Wessak festival as an alignment takes place between ourselves and the spiritual hierarchy, the Christ, the Buddha, and the Lord of the world. We approach the highest sources of truth, tapping into the bountiful, redeeming light that surrounds us, holding our minds open to these forces of enlightenment. We work to spiritually rejuvenate our world. We visualize the energies of Wessak building and the Christ and the Buddha preparing to transmit those potencies that will condition the planet throughout the year ahead. As brothers of revelation, their work continues to lift a ravaged world up towards the realm of truth and beauty. And our cooperation in meditation forms an essential part of the hierarchical chain. And through transmuted desire and a silent, fiery aspiration, the light of Wessak is shed abroad in our hearts, through our group, and throughout the world. So let's go into meditation. Using our letting in the light. Group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet and towards the Christ at the heart of hierarchy. Extend the line of light toward Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. Hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. reflect on the keynote. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is light. precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. We use the sixfold progression of divine love as a sequence of energy precipitation. Shambhala, hierarchy, the Christ, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, and physical centers of distribution. Lower interlude. Refocus consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. Together sound the affirmation of love. In the center of all love I stand. From that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. We visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy, streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. Consider how these impouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming world teacher, the Christ. distribution, as the great invocation is sounded, we visualize the outpouring of light, love, and power from the hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you all very much. A delighted participation. It was really beautiful. So we'll see you next year, and hopefully at the next 2 conferences you might be able to join in the Geneva one on 31st of May and the 1st of June, and London's on the 7th and 8th of June. Thank you so much for your participation. Bye.